Hey guys, John here from Sonic Drive Studio. I hope you're all doing well and welcome back to the channel. Today we're checking out the brand new Headrush Prime pedalboard. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, let's check out a demo track that I made with this unit with 3 different sounds, so 3 different presets. Let's check it out. Alright, I hope you enjoyed that. So all the sounds that you heard there were unprocessed and raw and all stock, so with the stock, cabs and everything. Oh, and by the way, the kind folks over at Headrush sent me this pedalboard, and this is technically a sponsored video. However, all thoughts and opinions, as always, are 100% my own. Okay, first what we're going to do is talk about all the features that this pedalboard has to offer. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about the presets from the intro and show what I used for those sounds. And then later in the video, we're also going to try the new amp cloning feature and compare it to one of my real amplifiers, so that should be fun as well. And during that, I will also share my opinions and let you guys know what I think. Now, this product is pretty expansive. It can do a lot. So what I'm going to do is basically look at it from my perspective, which is a sort of rock and metal rhythm guitarist. However, I will try to keep multiple styles and multiple types of players in mind. So until a week ago or so, I had never tried a Headrush product, nor the old 11 rack, so I was very excited to try this out. On paper, this product seemed quite promising. And when I took it out of the box, I was quite impressed with how it looked. the size of it and how sturdy it is, and it's just an impressive looking product. I turned it on and I immediately fell in love with the 7-inch touchscreen. It's a very detailed screen with a lot of colors, and it's just a lot of fun to work with, and it looks cool. It's definitely one of my favorite things about the Headrush Prime. I just love the idea of a touchscreen. It's a lot of fun to work with, and that's one of the things that I also enjoyed with my old Quad Cortex. Now, of course, you don't have to rely on the touchscreen alone. You've also got this control, this parameter control over here that you can move around, change presets with, and click as well. And then you've got these 3 controls over here that let you change various parameters. But the touchscreen is the main sort of area where I like to tweak the presets and tweak the sounds and go into the menus and stuff. So my overall experience with the user interface is very positive, and I really enjoyed working with it. I think the user interface and the controls and stuff and how it's laid out is pretty easy to use. And the expression pedal on the unit also feels very sturdy, and it's gonna last a long time. And when I turned it on for the first time, I didn't even plug in my guitar. I was just browsing through the menus and, to get a feel of how this unit works and how it feels to work with it and to work with the user interface. So that was all a lot of fun. So as I said, I've never tried a Headrush or an 11 rack, which is sort of the older generation kind of the Headrush. But I believe that the main amp models and cabinet models and effects and stuff were carried over from the previous version, but they did add a lot of new things as well. So I don't think that the main Headrush amplifiers are very new in terms of when they were designed, but I was able to get some cool tones out of them. There's a nice selection of clean, crunch, and high gain amplifiers to choose from there. Not as much as, say, the Helix or the Axe effects, which have quite expansive amplifier collections in them, but this should be enough for most guitarists. Now, I found the selection of the stock standard Headrush cabinets to be a little bit slim, especially for the high-gain rock or metal player like me. All the 4x12s are rather vintage flavored, at least for my taste, and the main cabinet that I enjoyed for my high-gain tones was the 2x12 B30, which was a little bit surprising because that's based on a 2x12 Bogner cabinet. So it would have been cool to see a little bit more sort of high-gain cabinets in that selection, to be honest. Of course, you can choose your microphone, you can set it on or off axis, and there's also a speaker breakup simulation, which is kind of cool. Now, with this selection of amplifiers and cabinets, it did take me a little while to find some combos that worked for me, for my style, at least with the stock amps and cabinets, the standard Headrush models, so to speak. But again, I'm talking from my own experience. The results might be very different for you with your style. I'm sure everybody will be able to find some cool tones in this unit. It just might take a little bit of effort. Now, something new that they added to the Headrush Prime is all the amplifiers and cabinets from the old ReValver plugin. Do you remember ReValver? That was the sort of peavey plugin with all the licensed peavey models and more. I remember enjoying that quite a bit back in the day. So all of those amplifiers and cabinets and also effects, I believe, are in here as well. We got a bunch of licensed peavey amp models like the 6505, the 6505 Plus, but also a Vox, a Fender, a Buddha, which is kind of cool, an Engel, and stuff like that. So it's cool that they also added that, and you definitely get more choices of amplifiers and cabinets that way. Now, there are quite a lot of ReValver cabinets to choose from. You can also combine the ReValver amps with the standard cabinets, or the standard amps with the ReValver cabinets, for example, and you can go quite deep in terms of tweaking, choosing your microphone, the microphone distance, enhancing the low end or the high end and stuff like that, so that's pretty cool. And on top of that, there are also some Headrush and Chop Tones impulse responses preloaded into this unit, so that's even more to choose from. So that's a lot of options in terms of amps and cabinets to choose from in total. Pretty cool. Of course, you can also load in your own impulse responses, and I really enjoy how they implemented that feature with this unit. You basically connect the Headrush to your computer and set it to the USB transfer mode, and then you can drag all of your IRs, folders and all into the unit. So it's basically just like adding files onto a hard drive or a USB drive. It's very easy and straightforward that way. And you can add as much as you like as long as the storage permits it, because this thing has about 5 gigabytes on it. But if you want to load even more files into this unit, so IRs, amplifier clones, presets, that sort of thing, you've also got a USB port, and you can put your USB stick into there and then put even more files into this unit. So that's pretty cool and unique. And I love that because it leaves it up to the user to determine how much storage space you need. And I like to load a lot of IRs. I'm an IR junkie, so for me that's perfect. Now that's something that I don't really like about the Helix, is that there's a very limited storage space for IRs, but not with the Headrush. When you have a lot of IRs loaded into the unit like I have, it does take a little bit longer for the unit to boot, so that's good to know perhaps. Something that's also new and very cool is the new vocal effects suite. Now the Headrush Prime has a dedicated mic input over here with a dedicated input trim control as well for adjusting the gain, which is very handy. And they've added all these new and cool vocal effects from Antares, like an auto tune, a vocoder, compressors, EQ, vocal distortion, and all sorts of cool things that can be great for the vocalist. So if you're just a singer, this thing can already be great with those features, but if you play guitar and sing, this thing can be very powerful. You can even make presets with one vocal chain and a guitar chain combined, so that's really cool. And of course you can control all the effects with the switches and stuff. So I imagine that this can be quite a powerful tool for people who want to add effects to their vocals and also change guitar tones and stuff on the fly. Now this unit also has a cool looper. I don't use loopers often myself, but the looper on this thing looked very cool and there were a lot of cool functions on there. So it does seem like a very powerful looper indeed. And we're almost going to get to the amp cloning. I know you guys are dying for that, but we're almost there. The Wi-Fi on this unit was also great and it had a very strong connection, unlike my old quad cortex. You can use this to access the Headrush cloud and then upload your favorite presets and download presets from other players and amp clones as well, so that's really neat. It also has a Bluetooth audio receiver as well as an aux in for practicing or, putting your music into this thing. And there's also the new music practice tool, which is great. It allows you to import your audio tracks into the unit and then play certain sections and loop them, change the pitch without changing the tempo, or change the tempo without changing the pitch. So that's great for practice. And the unit also has a very nice built-in metronome as well, which you don't see often in modelers. So for practicing and learning the guitar, I think that this thing can be very powerful indeed and a lot of fun to work with. Of course, you can also use the Headrush Prime as a USB audio interface. You can do reamping with it, record your dry tracks along with the processed sounds and stuff like that, which is very cool and handy. What I did find a little bit odd and sort of clunky in the workflow in comparison to other similar units is that if you want to use this as your USB audio interface, you have to go into the global menu first, and then in the USB settings, set the audio interface to on every time, basically. Anyway, again, not a big deal, but worth mentioning that the workflow is a little bit different on this than with other USB audio interface devices. Also, when I was reamping some tracks with this thing, I did notice that the wave files weren't perfectly time aligned on the grid. So they weren't aligned with the original DIs that I was reamping from, which is kind of annoying because then you have to shift them back or enter an offset in your DAW. But that's not really unique to the Headrush because my XFX3 also does that. But that's something to be aware of when you're going to reamp. You got to check first if everything is perfectly aligned. Otherwise, you're going to need to adjust that manually. Now, something that I was very curious and excited about was the new amp cloning feature. So just as with Tonex, Kemper, or the Quad Cortex, you can now clone your own amplifiers, pedals, and stuff like that. You can do your amplifiers direct or with a cab and a mic, however you like. And this unit also is capable of cloning fuzz pedals, which a lot of other units are not capable of doing. Of course, I wanted to try this for myself. So I made a clone of my PRS MT15 with this unit. Now the process of cloning is very easy and straightforward, and everything is very well explained in the menus when you enter them. And the cloning itself only takes about a minute or so. When it's done, you can A/B the real amplifier with the clone, and then make some tweaks with the EQ, add or subtract gain, change the level, and there's also this unique chug meter, which is cool. It makes the amp chug harder for sure. And then when you're happy, you store your clone, and then you can upload it to the cloud if you like, or store it on your unit. So that's all pretty handy and cool. And again, you can store as many as you like because the storage space is virtually unlimited. Now I cloned my MT15 direct, so with a load box. So I'm running an IR block after the clone with an Ownhammer IR loaded into it, the high gain mix from the 412 Rect Essentials package, which I'm using for the real amplifier and the clone. Let's go ahead and check out an A/B comparison of both the real amplifier and the clone so you guys can hear if there's a difference. Let's check it out. Cool, right? Not bad, but there was a little bit of a difference to be heard. The top end on the real amplifier was a little bit more open and bright than the amp clone, and the low end response also was a little bit different on the amp clone. What I also noticed when you put a clone into your preset is that the latency increases a little bit. So in that case, there is more latency than with the stock amplifiers, for example. It's not a lot, but it was enough for me to sort of notice it. Now, I really applaud Headrush for adding this feature. In fact, I wish that more companies would add cloning, capture, or profiling features because I think it's great. It's definitely a fun feature to have, and it allows you to really make the unit more personal. You know, add your own amplifiers and add your own tones, and also go online and find other tones from other players and stuff like that. So that's very powerful. I do, however, think that the accuracy level of the cloning in this unit is not as good as something like Tonex. It's more in line of how accurate the Kemper profiles are, for example. And the latency was a little bit off-putting for me, but you might not notice it at all. I guess it's a very subjective thing. But again, it's great that they added this feature. I really appreciate that, even though it's not perfect. In terms of the ins and outs, this pedal has an effects loop, XLR outs, as well as unbalanced jack outs, expression pedal inputs, an aux in, MIDI, etc. And something that I really like about this thing as well is the switches and the OLED screens and the coloring. It's really nice. Assigning the foot switches and the colors is all very easy and intuitive. And you can also set up the switches in various ways. So as a pedalboard or with scenes and stuff like that. Okay, now let's take a quick look at the presets from the intro. And let's start with the heavy rock tone from the beginning. Of course, I used my Les Paul Custom. Let's take a listen to the raw guitar track, so just the isolated guitars, and then I'll show you guys what I used. The chain basically starts with a noise gate, then a tube screamer pedal, then the peavey 51.2 lead amp model going into the stock Headrush cab block using the 2x12 B30 cab with the Dyne 7 mic. No post-processing was applied. I just wanted you guys to hear the pure and raw tones of this unit. Now let's take a quick listen to the clean ambient part. For the clean part, we're starting the chain with the gray compressor going into the AC high boost amp model, so that's a Vox basically, into the stock 2x12 AC blue cabinet with the Dyne 57 mic, into the stereo air delay on the ping pong setting matched to the tempo of the song, into the very nice ambiverb effect, and into the 11 reverb on the cathedral setting for a nice and lush reverb sound. I want to add that I really enjoyed working with all the effects on the unit. You can really get creative and get some great sounds out of this. Now, generally, I'm not a very heavy effects user myself, but I really enjoyed it, like I said. Some things could use a little bit of improving. The wahs, for example, are kind of limited in that you can't change the frequency range. It could be cool to add a little bit more bottom end or something like that, so perhaps that could be added in a future update. Something that was really surprising and cool though is that when you put a stereo effect in front of the amplifier, the sound remains stereo. So that means that basically the entire signal chain is stereo. That's really cool. And that's something that a lot of other modelers don't do. Usually when you put a stereo effect in front of the amplifier, the sound gets summed into a mono signal. But with this, when you put a stereo delay, for example, or a flanger or another modulation effect in front of the amplifier, the entire sound stays stereo, so that's awesome. Let's take a quick listen to the final metal rhythm tone. For the final metal tone, we're starting the chain with a gate, then the M2 lead amp, which is really voiced for tight metal, and it's based on the Boogie Mark II, into the 2x12 B30 cab model again, this time with the 67 condenser mic option. As you can hear, again, the tone is a little bit raw and unpolished, just so you guys can hear how this unit sounds in its pure form. And by the way, I've uploaded those 3 presets to the Headrush cloud so you guys can also try them for yourself. All right, I really enjoyed working with the Headrush Prime, so thanks again to Headrush for sending this over to me. Even though the Headrush is a lot of fun to use and it has a lot of great features, I don't think that it's absolutely perfect, but it can do a lot. It's a very versatile unit, so I'm sure that many players out there will get a kick out of this thing and that they'll use it to create some awesome and unique music. All of us musicians are just so different and unique, so it's all very much connected to your own personal style and your own experience. But once you've tried one for yourself, which I do encourage you to do in your local music store or something like that, I do encourage you to leave a comment down below to let me know your thoughts as well. I do expect there to be updates in the future, so it's going to be interesting to see what they add and what they change. But yeah, great job, Headrush. This is a cool device for sure. That's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed it and that you found it useful. Please hit the like and subscribe buttons down below, as that really helps the channel out. I'd hugely appreciate that. And you can also follow Sonic Drive Studio on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thank you guys so much and hope to see you soon. Cheers!